light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I'm Sister Who. Having been diagnosed with autism a number of years ago, I've been doing a lot of reading about autistics to find out, to understand myself more, but also to understand in a more comprehensive way the phenomena of autism. And I often run into various comments suggesting that autistic people frequently see in pictures, think in pictures, that it's not so much the words or the usual ways of understanding. Words, when it comes down to it, are actually a complex system of symbols. It's a written and auditory symbol for an understanding. The problem is that most language is written and designed from the perspective of a neurotypical person. An autistic person, conversely, would design a language from the point of really, really specific things. And they say, I've often heard it said, that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So in a sense, if an autistic is thinking in pictures, what may be one word to a neurotypical person represents 1,000 words in an autistic's mind, because of all the details of the particular picture that's envisioned. In that sense, Sister Who, being Sister Who, is kind of my voice taking the pictures of psychology and sociology and spirituality and history and society and everything I perceive, and looking for a system of symbols and metaphors by which to communicate about it. And in every case, being aware of so much detail, being aware of 1,000 words for every picture, that it becomes difficult to say things clearly and to say things eloquently and to say exactly what you mean the first time. The readily available way of dealing with that, I suppose, is that to remember, to consider, to assume even, that every conversation is an ongoing conversation, and that every picture that can be displayed, because of how it can be differently perceived by each individual person, each picture will represent 1,000 different words to each person. And as those persons begin to compare the same picture, they will wind up with as many thousand words as there are people in the conversation. If it's 3,000, if it's 3 people in the conversation, then it's 3,000 words that they're trying to compare and contrast and integrate to come to collective understanding of what the picture means, what it depicts, what it's attempting to communicate. So as Sister Who, I use symbols and metaphors and pictures a lot, but I have a reverence or a healthy respect, I suppose, for the myriad of meanings and interpretations that any picture can have. That being the case, Sister Who for each person is also a picture. And of course, from occasion to occasion and from year to year, a different picture each time. Each year I put together an inspirational calendar in which I try to come up with a caption and a photograph that someone can contemplate for an entire month and still get something out of it. But that means that every year I'm giving the world 13 more pictures of Sister Who. The possibility of at least 13,000 more words about the ways I perceive life, the understandings about life that I'm attempting to communicate. When I was in my doctoral program, it was a very unique program. Ultimately, I was not allowed to finish because it was so unique that the school ultimately decided to withdraw their support. But that's a whole nother story, and one I'm not actually supposed to talk about that much. But the reason I mention my doctoral program is that within it, I essentially came up with a self-designed doctoral program that was integrating psychology, sociology, and spirituality, which the first time I mentioned that to a particular person with a PhD more recently, and I won't give too much detail because I don't want to, it's not about shaming that person for what they said, but basically they dismissed my work because they didn't understand it and didn't feel motivated to ask more questions about it. But for all of you to understand, in creating this doctoral program, I expressed to the administrators that I wanted to study a convergence and integration, if you will, of psychology, sociology, and spirituality. What that basically means in layman's terms is coming to a way of understanding and measuring a healthy person holistically, a person who is body, mind, and spirit, and in all their dimensions, a healthy person. Psychology would denote the relationships they have with themselves, their self-awareness, the ways they understand the effects that relationships have had on them, the effects that experiences have had on them, the ways their own brain works. All of that falls into the realm of psychology. Sociology is the study of groups and people groups and the unique dynamics that people groups take on when that none of the people in the group necessarily have themselves. And so in my doctoral study, I interpreted sociology to represent those relationships that one has with others. Spirituality, then, I interpreted as the relationships one has with that which is greater than oneself, the invisible parts of oneself. Where does my own consciousness come from? Why does someone else who grew up in exactly the same circumstances think and behave and express themselves in completely different ways than I do? Why am I so unique? What is it about me that is so unique, and about my relationships with divine mystery and the larger universe that is so unique? So in spirituality, in my doctoral work, I decided that that was really primarily oriented around relating to that which is greater than ourselves, among which is the deeper understanding of ourselves that we still don't have, the things about myself that I haven't learned yet, the things I've learned about the invisible world, about how I experience what might be called the divine. Is it an embodied person? Is it a perfection of balance and integration in the universe? What exactly do we mean when we use the word divine? For me, or at least for me, it's the embodiment of highest wisdom and greatest love. But beyond that, I'm not quite sure what else to add, because it has to be way more than anything a human being could be. But somehow it is the convergence, and I suppose you could say even the expression of highest wisdom and greatest love. Does that require a person in the way that humanity understands persons to be? I don't know. I'm not sure whether it does or whether it doesn't. But when you put love and wisdom together, it's difficult to conceive of the convergence of those two not having a voice in some sense of the word. But whether that voice is from a spiritual person, a spiritual person without a physical body, or if it's the pattern of the universe, the beauty of the Hubble telescope photos speaking to us about ways that we could live with more wisdom and love, and with more humility to understand how small we are, and yet how incredible that we are among presumably a very limited number of species, or a very limited number of beings or consciousnesses or perspectives that are actually able to see the Hubble telescope pictures at all. Presuming that there is life on other planets and throughout the universe, they may not have access to the photographs we're seeing. And in a sense, that conveys a sort of privilege about our perception. That it is a privileged perception, but it is a perception of such beauty that it deserves to be shared widely and freely. And yet it also presents us with mysteries and questions and dimensions that are very difficult for a human mind to comprehend. That in this beautiful photograph of something taken by the Hubble telescope, of something that is so many light years away that even if we took our fastest rocket, we wouldn't be able to get there in our lifetime. And even within that photo, to travel from one side of the photo to the other side of the photo, recognizing that that is just a tiny piece of space. That even the distance across what we're looking at is so vast that quite possibly we couldn't travel that far in our lifetime. And yet here we are being able to see it from a great distance and to see the beauty of its colors and the uniqueness of its shapes and forms. So as an autistic person and as Sister Who, I find that I'm always looking for ways to express what some label the inexpressible, to describe the indescribable. In a sense, that's what every minister and spiritual person is always doing, relating to that which is incomprehensible, and yet somehow finding within that the ability to employ or to perfect dynamics of love and wisdom and intelligence and learning and living in a symbiotic way that is not just about me getting the most experience for however long my life shall last, because this body is not immortal, but about creating a work, a creative work, an intellectual work, a scientific work, some kind of work, creating something that has the ability to outlive me, so that when this body finally wears out and my heart and lungs can no longer sustain me in this form, that at that point there will be something of me that goes on and on and on, that blesses future generations who will never have the privilege of meeting me in person. To make something, to do and make and be something so good that it totally exceeds the boundaries of one's own lifetime. That to me is a truly successful life. I come to all of this as the person I am, with the consciousness that I have, with the configuration that I have, that I am autistic, that I'm gay, that I'm a man, that I live in this precise time, experiencing and observing and witnessing the precise things that I do. And trying to grow in that intersection, that somehow the ways that I relate to myself and my own self-awareness can be integrated with the ways that I relate to those around me, and can also be integrated with the ways that I relate to that which is beyond me, that which I don't yet understand. The dissertation I wanted to do, maybe someday I will get to do it, I wasn't able thus far, was that I actually came up with a way where you could plot the holistic health of an individual on a single triangular graph in a way that related to all three of these areas, that each of these areas was a point of the triangle, and that anytime I get unbalanced and move away from the center toward one of the points, the other 2 points begin to suffer. That if I become obsessed with spirituality, so that I am not spending adequate time just being the man that I am, looking in the mirror and in a sense owning how I look and how I live and what I do and where I spend my time and energy. That the relationship I have with myself needs to be a healthy one, not blaming myself for things that are not my fault, but at the same time not avoiding responsibility for contributions that I did in fact make to a particular moment or experience or situation. In a similar way, if I become obsessed with my sociological relationships, with being part of this group or part of that category, or seeking to embody whatever is meant by a particular race or a particular religion. The problem I find with that is that as you go toward sociology to the point of obsession, spirituality and psychology begin to diminish and lose their balance and lose their rightful place. The more I lose myself in my relationship with others, the more I forget who I am. And the more I lose myself in relationships with others, specific, concrete, limited human being others, the less thought I give to that which is beyond me, to that which is mysterious, to that which can grant meaning and purpose to the unfolding of my life, specifically my life within this time, within this world, within this place, within the configuration of current global problems. That whether it's poverty or overpopulation or inequities of economic distribution or outright war between competing political factions, these are challenges that overlap my life. And for me to be a whole person, I cannot be completely ignorant of them. I can't ignore them and pretend they don't matter, because there are people I love who are affected by those very directly, and sometimes I'm the one who's very directly affected. But because these are global things and communal things and big picture things, in order to address them effectively, we have to address them together. And so in a sense, as we enter this time where technology is accelerating and the possibilities that we live with now were unimaginable even 50 years ago, I find at the present time, as our systems begin to break down and we need new systems to be invented, that what we're essentially being pushed into, if you will, is rediscovering each other. Rediscovering what it is that makes you, you. That if I took your consciousness and put it in any other body, in any other place, it would still have some of the same qualities, because it's the core essence of what is you. That chooses to express itself in certain ways, through certain languages, through your particular gender and orientation. In amongst all of this, of course, is also the transgenderal experience, the person who, in a sense, finds himself born into the wrong body and works to create synchronicity between them. This is perhaps diverging a bit, but I was talking with someone recently about the struggles around how private should it be, how much disclosure should there be. And while on one hand I grant that there are people who want to sensationalize the transgenderal journey and obsess about what you might call shocking details, shocking only because they're unfamiliar, not because there's anything irrational or illogical about them. They're just something that has not really been part of anyone's general experience, I suppose, but is becoming a much more common experience within the current time because of the medical and technological possibilities within the current time that previous generations didn't have available to them. You know, that we actually can do sexual reassignment surgery now, of taking someone who was born into a male body and changing it to a female body, at least to a certain point. There are still limits to what humanity can accomplish. And a lot of that is way more complicated than we can get into within this show. But what I was discussing with this person is that it's not about, oh my God, are you preoperative or postoperative? And many trans people would answer, well, that's really none of your business. I'm not sure that's the right answer. On one hand, I think there is something that is appropriate privacy. That there shouldn't be an invasion of the person, a violation of the person, a violation of personal boundaries. On the other hand, I think it's too often presumed to be an adversarial question, when what is really going on may be much more analogous to a woman's pregnancy. When a woman becomes pregnant, she has within her a life that is growing, that is going to be potentially completely different than she is. Completely different, head in directions of which she may not approve, become someone with particular aptitudes and interests. It could be anything from the next Leonardo da Vinci, to a factory worker, to an artist, to an engineer, to a doctor or a medical scientist. It could be anything. people get excited about the pregnancy. When are you due? When is the baby going to be born? Because they want to be there to witness the birth of new life and to celebrate and nurture and cheer at this new possibility that has come into our world. I suggest that that should be more the experience of people who discover themselves to be trans. That it is a person within coming out, that it is something that is becoming manifest. And it's not that anyone wants to know the blow-by-blow description of what happened in the delivery room. Thank you very much, I don't want to hear it. People assure me that it's a beautiful experience, and maybe for them it is. I choose not to go there. My personal choice. But in the same way that we celebrate the birth of a child, that we celebrate new possibilities and we support those new possibilities, and we cheer, and was the baby born healthy, and was it not stillborn? Was it not a miscarriage? Did we succeed in having a new life enter the world, a life that can be nurtured and cheered, and celebrating birthdays? In a similar sort of way, when a person discovers himself or herself to be trans and begins to discover this new life within that is going to be coming out, it makes sense to me that those who love this person will want to know, well, how far along are you, and when's the due date, and all the same things that would want to know about a pregnancy. And so that when a trans person finally makes the complete transition to where there are no more surgeries to do, there is simply a new life to begin nurturing and creating and building, perhaps a new profession to develop, a new wardrobe, a new social circle, a new collection of routines for each day of life. That the people who love that trans person, of course, want to celebrate, and celebrate the accomplishment of the new life coming out, finding a way to make it beautiful, finding a way to make it absolutely healthy, finding a way to give it what it needs to develop and mature and grow and blossom in all sorts of unknown ways. Nobody knows when a child is born what that child will become, and yet we mark that event with joy. In a similar sort of way, I would like to see in the future, for whoever is able to do it, I guess, when someone discovers himself or herself to be trans, to embrace it as this same sort of process of gestation, that it's the person within coming out, and this community that wants to support that person in the development of their new life, and wants to cheer when they have passed certain significant mile markers. It's not about not giving them any privacy. It's about validating the relationships they have with their community, a community that specifically wants to support them in the fullest and most beautiful development of the person they authentically find themselves to be on the inside. It's about a communal accomplishment of individual integrity. I have heard some of my trans friends speak of the general preoccupation with passing, that a trans woman, at least in some contexts, I guess, seeks to pass as a woman who was born genetically a woman in the body of a woman without the trans journey to contend with. I don't know that a trans woman should pass as a woman who is born in a female body. I think a trans woman is a trans woman, and there is something that being a trans woman, a perspective and understanding, a depth of experience that can be a gift to the community if it is appreciated and respected, but not in a way that is invasive or personally violating or sensationalizes things, but in a way that celebrates the person's becoming. It's not about being like everybody else or being like the stereotype of a woman. It's about being authentically, completely, beautifully who you find yourself to be. that it's not about passing as a woman, it's about being the trans woman, the trans man, the woman, the intersexual, whatever you find yourself to be, being who and what you are, authentically, honestly, truthfully, completely, joyfully, without comparing yourself to some other standard as some sort of, I'm supposed to be this, I'm supposed to be that. Maybe we could just get back to saying, I'm supposed to be me. And I'm still learning, but this is what I find to be authentically me. And when we get to the point where everyone can simply authentically be who and what they find themselves to be, and be supported in their journey of continual self-discovery, I think we will have a community of such potential and power that it will amaze all of us. The love and wisdom that will begin to be the norm of everyday life. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I've given you some good things to think about.